So we are very excited with so many attendees. We had about 120 people who were registered for this event, which is certainly a record for this initiative. So we're excited to have you all with us. So again, I'm going to give everyone just a couple minutes. We started a couple minutes late on our end. So apologies for that, but we'll make sure we're respectful of your time and we'll get you out of here on time. But while folks are kind of zooming in, I'm going to just kick us off and get us started. So my name is Barb White, and I'm going to be your moderator here this evening for our panel discussion on food as medicine. And I am joined by Lily DeGroot and Aveline Argo, who are helping me to facilitate and moderate. And on behalf of all of us and the entire entrepreneurship team, we'd like to thank our panelists for joining and for sharing their wisdom and insights and expertise. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining in as participants. And this is really all about you. So we look forward to hearing your questions and really hear what you guys have to say about this topic and the questions that you have for our panelists. By way of introductions, for those who don't know me, I'm an entrepreneur in residence here at Georgetown, and I have been that since 2019. And I have a particular focus in healthcare. In fact, last year, we started a new initiative here in eShip called the Healthcare Entrepreneurship and Innovation Initiative. And through that, our goal is to really expand our support for all health innovators across our Georgetown community. Everything from clinical care to diagnostics and therapeutics to wearables and technology and biotech, and the list goes on. So we're excited to host this event. We know that there's been quite a bit of interest in it. And when Lily and Aveline and I were talking earlier this year about what to kind of bring to you guys, we knew this event was going to really get a lot of interest. And as I said, we had over 120 people register. So we're excited to see how many are able to join us. We are recording, if I'm not mistaken, and we're going to be using that primarily for our own purposes. But just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. But before I get started in introducing our panelists, I do want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. So obviously you all know you've logged into a Zoom webinar, which means that your participation is going to be primarily through the chat feature. And so again, we're looking forward to your questions. Lily and I will be tag teaming and doing our very best to get to all of your questions. But apologies ahead of time if we don't get a chance to get to your question. Or if we see a number of questions that appear similar, we may, combine them into a single question. So if you don't hear yours asked exactly the way you phrased it, that's the reason why. And another thing, this is probably the most important point, is if your question, if you would like it to be answered by a particular panelist, please indicate that in your question. I don't assume all of our panelists are going to answer all of the questions. So if you really want to hear from one of them, please let us know. We'll make sure to pass the question on to that person. So one of the things that was the hardest thing to do when putting this conversation together was really trying to narrow the scope. If you just kind of Google food as medicine or food as medicine, you'll get a lot of different facets of this topic, and they're all really, really interesting. And we may decide we want to do another event focused on something a little bit different. But one of the things that you'll see over and over again is the discussions around food inequities and healthcare inequities, and the need to continue to educate everyone, including our healthcare practitioners, about the importance of diet, nutrition, and food on our individual health, on our community health, and on our planet's health. However, tonight, we're going to take a little bit of a different dive into the topic, and we're really going to focus on trends and efforts that are seeking to improve the nutritional value of our food, the flavor of our food, and the sustainability of our food through technology and innovation, in the hopes, again, of overall improving our individual health, our community health, and the health of our planet. If you are interested in food inequities, food scarcity, access and education to food, I'm going to throw up a link in a couple of minutes with a link to the White House's Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. And it's got a lot of great citations on some interesting public and private partnerships and some programs that are happening across the country, across communities, So I recommend you check that out if that's of a particular interest to you. Because I'm a data person, I'm going to throw some statistics at you. So just to kind of set the tone for how important this topic is, how timely this topic is, a recent article in BMJ cited 1 in 5 deaths across the globe, not just the US, but across the globe, is attributable to suboptimal diet. Let me say that again. 20% of deaths across the globe can be attributed to suboptimal diet. And that is more than any other single risk factor, including tobacco use. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. Another statistic is about half of American adults, it's about 120 million people, have one or more preventable chronic diseases, many of them related to poor diet and our physical inactivity. And those include things like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers. And lastly, another statistic is in 1 year alone in the United States, there are over 48 million instances of foodborne illness in the United States, with 3,000 of those ending up in death. So if you think about, again, the timeliness, the impact of this topic, you can't get more impactful than some of the statistics that I just mentioned. And one of the other reasons that I am so passionate about this topic and about healthcare in general is my own experience. I am a multi-chronic illness patient, and I am also an organ transplant recipient. And I've been very fortunate to have a team of doctors who both embrace and advocate for food as medicine as part of my overall treatment plan to complement my pharmaceutical regimen. And over the years, I have learned so much about my own personal microbiome and what foods and nutritions and combinations and sequencing of those things work best for me, help me perform well, help me manage my symptoms, help me manage my diseases. So, and as a immunocompromised person, food safety and foodborne illnesses is something I am particularly focused on as a risk management idea for myself. So I'm particularly interested to hear from our panel about what is going on and new innovations and new technologies. So without further ado, let me introduce them. And I'm actually going to read this because I want to make sure that I get them right. So first up is Dr. Ivica Labuda. And Dr. Labuta's graduate studies and postdoc research were conducted at the Slovak Academy of Sciences and at the University of Graz and at Rutgers here in New Jersey. Her experience in the industry began at Kraft Foods, working in flavor biotechnology and food safety. She continued her research in biotechnologies across a number of different companies, including DuPont and PepsiCo, where she established and managed biotechnology groups and research programs focused on flavor ingredients, taste, antioxidants, antimicrobials, and skin. Her research was published in 26 scientific journals, and she has 13 US and international patents. She is the founder and president of 2 companies, BioKeys for Flavors and NovaCara. In her current role as professor and director of biotechnology programs here at Georgetown, she enjoys her interactions with students and is passionate about the field of biotechnology. So welcome, Dr. Labuda. Next up, we have Lainey Clark. She serves as the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Manager for the Good Food Institute, a nonprofit think tank working to make the global food system better for the planet, people, and animals. And she helps emerging companies in the alternative protein sector launch and scale. In addition to founding her own company that she exited through acquisition in 2016, she's worked with numerous startups for more than 20 years. Since 2017, she's been an entrepreneur in residence here at Georgetown. And additionally, she served as a mentor over at GW's Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, including engagements with the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program and the Korean Innovation Center. She holds her degree from Wake Forest University. Welcome. And last but not least is Panos Kostopoulos. He's the founder and CEO of Proxy Foods, which is a DC-based SaaS company that empowers food and beverage enterprises to optimize recipe formulation through AI-powered precision. Beyond this role, he also co-founded and serves as the director of Cell Ag Greece, which is a nonprofit organization committed to advancing cellular agriculture and other innovative sustainable food technologies. He holds a master in chemical engineering from NTUA and a master's in biotechnology from Georgetown. So welcome, Panos. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to kick off the conversation, and please, please, please put your questions in chat as we get started. But I'd first like to just understand, and I'd like each of you to answer this, is how did you kind of get into this line of study, this career path, and why do you feel so passionately about it? So maybe we'll start with Dr. Labuda.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you for the kind words and introduction. Hello to everybody who is just listening and watching. So as I many times taught to my students, life doesn't evolve on a straight line. And sometimes it is taking us to the journey, which is unpredictable, but very exciting. Biotechnology to me is an exciting field, and it was always. I started it, as you pointed out, my PhD was PhD, but then I started with food and flavors, which was really exciting. I had 2 patents which are actually used in the industry, which is great. Then I went to Roche. Then I started to do some more studies with taste, which if you think about it, if you like food, you will come back to repurchase, right? So it's very important to get to the bottom of it. Also, taste is very much connected with our health. We have taste receptors all through the body. We have taste receptors in the guts. They are very important communicators, so to speak, with our brain. So I evolved also through the taste, and then also through the skin, because believe it or not, skin also has olfactory receptors. We don't know yet why, but they are sometimes indicated in allergies, for example. So I'm very excited because biotech has many pockets. One is, for example, regarding the food, right? Regarding the food, you can think about nutraceuticals. How do you create functional foods? How do you create some more nutritious food? For example, there was a beta-carotene cloned into corn and beta-carotene cloned into wheat to prevent blindness and also improve eyesight in the countries where rice is a staple food. Many times biotechnology helped to improve, for example, eggplant because it was damaged by the pests. And biotechnology, again, was there to improve and to bring actually natural remedy to it. And it is in Bangladesh, in India, in Philippines, it's a major staple of food. So there are many ways where biotech certainly plays a major role. You mentioned microbiome, for example. So we have microbiome all through our body, not only in the guts, where there is very important for digestion, for creating the right response, immune response of the body, but we have it also on skin. Our skin is covered with microbes. Our oral cavity is covered with microbes. So there are so many things. I can go on. And I have been teaching food biotechnology at Georgetown for past 20 years. And it's really one of my favorite subjects, because we are not only scientists, but we are also consumers. So I can relate to all of these issues, but I don't want to take all the time, so I'll leave it to somebody else.
Okay, well, awesome. I love the passion. So Panos, why don't you go next?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. I can confirm the passion of Dr. Ivica Labuda. Last year, this time, we had Zooms and we had all these amazing things that she was teaching us, or we were learning as part of the biotech program. So very happy to be here. So for me, it started, I was a chemical engineer. I was doing many exciting stuff. And then surprisingly, I ended up living with a dog. And I fell in love with him. And then I started realizing that they have feelings and everything. So it really shaped my perspective. So I decided to have an impact, not to be part of the problem, but to be part of the solution. So while I was an engineer, I was like, what can I do to be helpful? So biotechnology back then seemed a very, very promising way to have impact. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do biotech. So I focused on fermentation techniques of microalgae. I was producing vegan omega-3 fats through wood waste and other fermentation techniques with bacteria, fungi, and other species. And then I want to have a bigger impact. So I decided to move to a bigger country. And back then I had like the globe. I was thinking, where should I go? And the US and biotech seemed like the perfect combination. So I was trying to find a school that would allow me to finish fast, and I will learn things and I will network. So Georgetown University in the biotech program seemed like the perfect program for me. It was only 1 year. I talked with Dr. Labuda and Kylie DeVito first, and I was sure that this is where I wanted to go. I applied and I studied. When I was studying bioinformatics, I realized the real power of AI, especially when you have combinatorial problems. So it was back then when you had the AlphaFold from DeepMind that we were able to go from the genomic sequence to the secondary structure of proteins. So being as a food developer and R&D scientist myself, I was trying to do similar things in-house and I was trying to code. And this was like AI can be very helpful. So I went from engineering to biotech, and then AI was very promising. And I can explain later why AI. So I combined biotech and AI to help first humans and animals' health and the overall health of the planet. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Lee?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. These are hard acts to follow. I had a very different path. I became a vegetarian when I was 11 and later a vegan, but that was all driven by sort of this passion for animals. And so I started my own company after working for many, many years in for-profit companies and not in the tech industry and so forth. I started my own for-profit company, but in the pet industry. And we were kind of like a Whole Foods for pets. And I grew it to a regional chain, and then it was acquired. So I had experience on the retail side, but I kind of felt like there was this cognitive dissonance between what I was doing and what I believed in, because I was still supporting factory farming by selling pet food. So I moved over to the manufacturer side with a company that was completely vertically integrated. They were regenerative farming and organic and sustainable and had all of the things that I thought that I wanted and needed. And I helped them launch a startup in the pet food industry and got the food on Chewy and went through all of that. Felt really good about the product. But as I moved along in my career, I realized that I wasn't doing enough. And part of that was working with Georgetown, to be honest, because I really started to see the passion of around impact. And so I thought, well, what can I do that would be bigger, like on a global kind of level, rather than just at a regenerative farming business? Because regenerative agriculture is wonderful, but it is not going to scale. And so in order to meet all of the different solutions for the negative externalities of conventional meat agriculture, then I decided to join GFI. And GFI is a think tank, as you mentioned earlier. We work across policy, corporate engagement, and science. We are very much science-led, and we are not beholden to any corporations. So the findings that we share are completely based in agnostic positions. If we didn't believe in what we were doing, we wouldn't do it. And for me, I think it's very important to have these kinds of opportunities to talk to the younger generation, because I think a lot of the advancement we're going to make is going to be because of the younger generation. Max Planck famously had a dim view of science, and to summarize it, basically said science happens one funeral at a time. And I think that we are kind of seeing that, where we're going to need much more open-minded people coming through. We're having, you know, that tipping point right now in a very nascent industry, which is all proteins. But I'll stop there and just say that I'm grateful to be here and happy for all the people who are watching.
Great. Thank you, guys. There was Panos had a post a couple weeks ago about this event, and it kind of got me thinking. It was about, you know, a quote from, maybe it was Hippocrates, I can't remember who it was, but it made me really think about what's interesting. One thing that's interesting about this topic writ large is it is both futuristic and ancient, right? In terms of how we view food, how food has always been part of how we, you know, prevent and treat illness. And you know, I was thinking through just kind of like everyday life and kind of reading about all of your backgrounds. And you think about everything from, you know, the fortified cereal that I had for breakfast this morning to, you know, you might have kimchi or yogurt on your dinner table every night, or you might be working at Good Food Institute and exploring how to incorporate omega-3 fatty acids into cultivated seafood, right? There's there's like an incredibly wide range of what we're talking about when we talk about food as medicine. So I'm curious, and again, anyone can take this question, what are some of the growth areas, maybe trends, and that's not necessarily the right word, but the areas where you are finding a lot more growth, a lot more focus, a lot more resources being put behind? And you'll probably each have different answers to that. It'll be like the Quakers, when the mood strikes you, just speak.
Okay, I'll start. I'll start. So there are at least two different things which are on forefront, and one is nutrigenetics, which means how are your gene impacting your health and your nutritional values? How do you really? We know that genes are only 30% contribution to health and to the nutrition, and 70% is really the lifestyle. So there are many other things which go into that. However, genes really dictate many times, and many times we have a predisposition to some kind of illnesses. And in those cases, it's even more prominent that we need to pay attention to food and what we take. And for example, there is a company called Zoe Personalized Nutrition, which is doing a prediction based on, it's an in-home test which you can purchase, and you can predict the insights basically to your health. There are some biomarkers they are following, and you can establish your patterns, and you can also they check your gut microbiome. I heard recently I heard, and this is really funny, somebody came up with actually the toilet which samples the stool and submits it, and then you submit it for the analysis to monitor how is your microbiome, because we know that microbiome is so important. So not only all the sphere of antioxidants and everything which is, like you mentioned, vertical foods, for example. I think, Lane, you mentioned vertical foods, but there is like this in-home salad growing, right? When you can grow your own salad at home, you don't need to really go to the supermarkets to buy it. So there is another kind of a business opportunity, or maybe something to tackle on. And certainly we are looking at the micronutrients, and micronutrients are so important. I can mention all the vitamins and minerals which are so critical to our health, and also aging. So aging is a completely different category, but more and more it is visible that we can age gracefully, and our metabolism actually is shutting down when we are aging. So how to impact it, how to increase it, how to really help to age us beautifully, or so to speak, healthily.
Healthfully. Yeah. Awesome.
I'll be happy to go next.
Sure.
So I think two things that I'm really excited about and seeing a lot of growth areas and novel inputs, crop inputs, so that we can get away from these monocropping situations we're in with soy and wheat. I think that stands to unlock potentially more nutritious options for us. And we have used so few of the natural ingredients that are out there. And this is definitely true for plant-based food, but also in the fermentation space, it is fascinating to see how many strains of yeast are being discovered. And we have been limited to just really a handful for forever. And so now we're starting to see that there is a whole universe out there of molecules that can help us to make our food much healthier. And I think we're going to be seeing huge changes to our diets because of these two very important kind of transitions that we're making.
Awesome.
I can continue. So, eat your food as your medicine. Otherwise, you will eat your medicine as your food, right? But we need three main things from our food. We need to enjoy the process, make us look good, and live forever. Three value propositions. That's it. If we manage to do that, we can have a big impact. So when I was thinking about the areas of AI that could be helpful, to have a good case for AI, you need three things: a vast data space, a combinatorial data space, and number three, a human feedback in the loop. So in food, we had this case, right? Because you have all this data around ingredients, species, crops, consumers, insights, everything. You have the combinatorial space because every time you add an ingredient, it changes the combination of adding a new ingredient. And then we have the feedback, right? We say, I like it, I don't like it. That's an ancient mechanism of protecting, of telling us what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, preparing our saliva secretors, our gut to prepare for the digestion. So before, when I was trying to have like the biggest impact I could have, and I was like, okay, we have biotech, we have AI, and I draw real story in my house, the whole value chain, how food ends up in our plate. So you have to start with, as Lane said, the inputs. This can be from seed, seafood, meat, crops, fermentation, whatever. You take that, you have the people that process it, you have the formulation of ingredients, you have the people that deliver it, and then you have the people that might have an extra processing like the cooking, and they will eat it. So I was trying to find where can we have the biggest impact. And we realized that every innovation has its heart at a recipe, right? So we're trying to give the toolbox to all these R&D scientists to make the transition from their kitchen to the shelf much faster, because you have the big company, they have the infrastructure, they can do that. But what about all these people that they grow this, they found this great species or this great plant and they want to change the recipe? It's very hard for them to do all the calculation, all the analysis. So we're trying to democratize, the innovation. So that's why we're trying to give these tools to people. And there are many innovative companies in all these areas. So the people that on how the crops that they're growing, the genetic engineering they're doing of the crops, the way that they're growing, like vertical farming or regenerative, the way that they process from supply chain, the specialty functional ingredients, the added nutritional value, the way that you grow stuff like from cell cultivated to fermentation, and then you have the people that they put in on the retailers or the food service, and then you have to monitor. So what happens after we eat the food? We're unique. We have specific, unique genome. We have unique lifestyle aids, and we have different environment and condition that changes our epigenetics. So you have all this value chain, and I think throughout the value chain, we see innovative companies that are trying to change the modus operandi.
Interesting. I don't know that I agree I want to live forever, but I agree with a lot of those other things. Lily, I think you had a question.
Yes. So as healthcare entrepreneurs, I'm curious how you balance the ethics of creating a food product needed for human health with the necessity of maintaining a revenue for your business. And this is a question we ask a lot within healthcare entrepreneurship, but I'm just curious what each of your perspectives are on this.
Well, if I may, first time, I don't see any reason why not to make money on a product, right? If you create something innovative and good for common, I mean, like I showed you an example of beta carotene in corn, in rice, right? It benefits so many people. So if somebody makes money as a profit from it, it's fantastic. I mean, so it benefits both, right? We need to bring the money back to the society to feed another innovation, right? We cannot just stop where we are. I think there was a fantastic collaboration between American Heart Association and Rockefeller Foundation. They put billions of dollars to a new initiative because they see that many people actually from the lower social economical sphere cannot afford to buy produce. Produce is expensive, right? It's actually sometimes more expensive than meat. So how can you help that lower level? And many times those people suffer from heart attacks or strokes or high blood pressure. So can you mitigate that and actually give them healthier food, because that healthier food actually will help them to avoid medication next time. So there was a term called prescription for produce, right? Can we have a prescription for produce instead of prescription for medicine? We don't need to have statins if we can prepare the whole generation to be healthier. We don't need macaroni and cheese in the schools, right? That whole institutional food pyramid should change. we should have healthier food in schools. We should have healthier food in cafeterias, right? But if you look at the price, bagel is much cheaper than if you want to buy a salad, right? So there is this contradiction, yes, and I probably ran away from your question about the profit, but I think that there is nothing wrong of making profit on innovation. Many times the patents are incredibly expensive to maintain, right, for a good reason. So I'll stop there.
In my world, profit matters tremendously. We're always very, very aware that in order to succeed as a sector, we're going to have companies that are profitable. The good news is that while it's very, very difficult to move large amounts of people to new behavior based on a moral imperative, we are seeing a lot of people who care very deeply about nutrition, and they are reporting in droves that they want to make sure that the food they're buying is healthy and that they're willing to pay a slightly higher premium for it. While our industry is nascent, I think a lot of the products will be a little bit more expensive, but a goal very much is to get the price down, not only to parity with conventional options, but below that, so that people in the global south can eat, so that people who are nutritionally deprived can get healthier, and so that people who don't have a lot of money can have access. So I think these are all questions that are very, very good to answer. And I think that the era of some of the choices that we had decades ago is well and over.
Hope so. So I'm going to pause there for a second and see if anyone from our audience has any questions. Please put them into the chat and we will absolutely ask them on your behalf while they are typing. So one of the things that we talked about a little bit already about some of the, new startups that you guys are seeing. I'm curious, if you've seen any that are specifically piquing your interest. Obviously, we're here as Entrepreneurship, so we care about kind of supporting that ecosystem and those innovators that you guys just talked about. But are there anything, either you can name them if you like, or just generally areas where you see some really interesting things that are happening? And what impacts do you think that those particular startups or businesses might have? And you can say your own if you want.
I can answer. We're seeing some really fascinating work in expressing proteins through plants and plant molecular farming, and that term is going to change quite likely because it's a term that's very common in pharma, and food tends to want to get away from pharma. The other thing that I think is very interesting technology that may be able to be brought to market sooner is the concept of hybrids and blends. So whereas you might have, let's say, a plant-based burger that doesn't taste right and you introduce cultivated fat. And so all of a sudden now that burger has a better mouthfeel, feels a lot more like the real thing, or I should say the conventional thing. And I think there is great promise there in terms of expediting the path to market and also getting consumers to accept certain products. And we're seeing in the hybrid world where like Tyson has products that are some percentage of conventional meat and some percentage of plant-based. And so I think there's some real opportunities for people to reduce consumption of anti-nutrients and get access to the good stuff in the near future.
What's an anti-nutrient?
Anti-nutrient is a nutrient that actually works against your body, and it might cause more inflammation, or it might reduce the balance of your microbiome, but we have anti-nutrients in much of our food today, unfortunately.
Any other exciting startups you guys want to mention? If not,
I can continue. First, for the profit also part, I would like to mention that I was watching on Netflix on the hidden lives of pets, mice driving a car. Like a true story. It was unbelievable to see it, but they were doing it. How did they do it? With positive reinforcement learning. You have like the food there, and they go and they will repeat it, and after a while you can do so many things, and you can see how smart are so many animals around us. So for animals is the food. Unfortunately or fortunately for people, our treat is the money in many cases. So profit can run as a a big motivational power, and you can have impact. So you can use profit as a fuel to have a larger impact. Regarding the companies, I agree with what Lane said. I think there are many advancements, I think, on fermentation, both precision fermentation, recombinant proteins, and molecular farming. And we will see companies tracking activities. Now we have the wearables, so you can see how does that changes your daily life. So I think we're going to more of a personalized meal options. I think will be very interesting to start understanding. And if we did correctly and we have the right data, this could have an impact in the overall world. So I'm also a data person as you, Barbara. So I think now we have the technology, the computational power, and the algorithms to understand some of these hidden patterns. So anything that has to do with that.
So, so glad you mentioned data. We have a question from the audience that I think is related to data. So they write, I was recently in a class where we focused on how certain food trends to be healthy are in no way backed up by evidence, such as drinking green tea. Are you conducting studies or recognizing studies in your work to make sure that what you're doing is effective? And how do you go about doing that?
That's actually, if I may take that one, it's really a very, very important actually question. And I think it's a great question because in essence, we don't monitor the biomarkers. We don't monitor for many of the vitamins I mentioned to you. We have some of them are recommended daily allowance, but for many of the, you name it, antioxidants, we don't have really recommended daily value. We just say, oh, it's very good for you. It's eat blueberries or eat resveratrol from red the grapes, right? So many times we have these recommendations, but it's not monitored. Nobody measures your. Somebody was saying again, one of these gurus was saying, well, I take 1 gram of resveratrol, but there is no recommended daily value, right? To get to such a huge amount of intake. So it's a very like a green tea because we have a lot of good polyphenols and phenolic compounds in it, which are beneficial, which are antioxidants. So people drink the green tea because for that antioxidation. But where does it work exactly? Does it impact your microbiome? It depends on so much. I mean, medicine is difficult and complicated, and diseases are complicated, but food is even much more. And we are dealing with the healthy individuals for most part.
And you mentioned earlier, like this idea of personalization, at least that's the word I'm going to use, personalization of some of these, techniques of saying like, I can study my own microbiome. I can, and I have done, right? I have with my gastroenterologist and other doctors been like, how does this particular food in this dose affect things? But that
goes
out of reach.
It goes actually to Pano's effort to use AI and to use the computerized systems and databases to build it up. But we are just at the beginning of the really understanding what's happening in our microbiome. We don't really know, and it is so complicated because you and I are very different. Your intake, what your mother gave you, actually you carry it for the rest of your life. So whatever your mom gave you as a microbiome is really determining many times what kind of allergies, what kind of future you will have regarding the food. So it's very complicated answer, and I don't know if I have the answer, but
no, I think you answered it, which is kind of like we don't really,
and it is personalized.
It's nascent. It's probably starting. It's not enough. It's not robust enough yet to draw the conclusions that many people are drawing.
Correct. And just one more thing which I forgot to tell when Lily was asking question is that we need to keep in mind that food industry is a high volume, low margin. So whenever you are talking about making business out of food, you need to really sell volume because otherwise it's not a sustainable business model. I wanted to add it on.
Great. Another question, with so much innovation in the food sector, is the FDA too lenient and allowing too many unnatural ingredients in our diet. Many ingredients allowed in the US food and skincare products are banned in the EU and elsewhere. Anyone want to take that one?
If I may just one, I'm sorry. I think that actually FDA does a very good job with monitoring. Something goes through maybe, but I think that they have a guidelines for instance, biotech products. You have to go through the approval process. It's true that we don't have to label it in the United States, but you have to prove that it is not toxic, that it is not damaging to the health, and et cetera, et cetera. So I have a faith in FDA actually, or USDA, when they're approving the ingredients.
I would also like just to mention for people that why it's complicated. People maybe sometimes don't understand that it's not like a conspiracy theory that they want us all unhealthy. When you have a specific pharmaceutical or whatever you have 3 phases of the clinical trials, and you might have the biomarkers, or you might looking up regulation of one protein or down regulation. With food, it's chaotic. What are you looking for? It can affect so many things, and there are so many variables. When do you eat? Like maybe resveratrol is good every day. Do you have to do cycles? Do you have to do increased growth? Do you have to avoid it with specific combination? Do you have to avoid it when you do a specific exercise and environment? How do you monitor these things? It's a very complicated stuff. So that's why I think also FDA is trying to do a really good job in order to keep the balance on how many things we know without preventing innovation.
That you kind of like are leading into another, more of a statement than a question that we got from the audience, but she writes, as a physician, we have very little training in nutrition in med school, and I would argue after med school. There's a new organization, lifestyle medicine, that focuses on nutrition, exercise, sleep, meditation, et cetera. But I think that goes to the point that, you know, like you all are saying, is it's, you know, everybody is so different. And I know the amount of time that we spend focused on these building blocks, these core things about our health, are not necessarily the focus, and maybe are not getting enough airtime, if you will, in schools and in practice. Sadly, I think my personal opinion on our healthcare system is, you know, we are designed to fix problems and not necessarily prevent them from happening. And I think that puts a lot of our practitioners at a disadvantage in terms of being able to really spend the time that sounds like it's necessary with individuals to really make that kind of an impact. But if anyone had any other thoughts on that comment.
Yeah, I'll just say that on a personal note, I had someone very, very close to me who was extremely ill, and we went to many hospitals around the country, and I was stunned by the food offering in the cafeterias. And it's a shame. I think we're going to get there eventually, but right now we have a long way to go.
And it only gets worse overnight. Yeah, you're like vending machine, banana pudding, like what do I want to eat?
I also wanted to just add about the FDA that we have a world-class system for identifying which foods are safe, and the FDA process is unbelievably rigorous. It is not easy to get approvals. And I just think that, you know, Panos mentioned conspiracy theory. We need to trust that our processes are going well, because they are. But the food system is massive, and sometimes there may be a mistake or two that slips through the cracks, but it's very rare, and I think we're very lucky for that. It's not that way all over the world, and we're very privileged.
If I may add on, this one is that there is innovation happening in the diagnostics area, especially what you just said, Lane, for diagnostic of the pesticides, for example, for diagnosis of the foodborne pathogens. And I had a privilege to work on a riboprinter, which before we used to have like we needed a week to detect the foodborne pathogens. Now we can do it in 6 hours because of the progress, because of the innovations, because of the science. So I think that we are inching along and we get better and better. Is it perfect? Probably not, right? But I think that with science, with more money and more innovation, we will get forward to a better food, and hopefully to everybody, for everybody.
Oh, go ahead.
Go, sorry.
Okay. I guess moving on to our next question that we had from an attendee. Do you know of any examples of misuse of biotechnology in the food marketplace, despite the rigorous FDA process, I guess? Are there things that consumers should look for or be worried about when examining these products?
So I will say something which may not some people like, but as I said, most of the time, FDA has a rigorous process where you have to go through approval of the biotech products on the market. However, there is, for example, an apple on the market, which is called non-bruising apple, which they used a CRISPR to demonstrate that you can use the CRISPR gene editing tool, and they eliminated a gene for browning. So when you buy an apple, you don't see if it was hit or if somebody abused it. Do you need to have such an editing? You don't, right? Because I would like to see if the apple was bruised, right? So there are sometimes companies who do a research which really doesn't benefit the customer, like what you were asking before, Lily, or somebody was asking. So I don't know of any really misuse of biotechnology, but I think that this was a misjudgment when they started to work on a project and then they brought it to the market, and it will be a flop, right? Or there was a tomato which was made to taste better, but it was a flop because it didn't taste that much better, right? So there are examples like that, but it's not because of that it's not safe, it's because there was some other reason why they didn't make it.
And there are side effects that people do mistakes. Some people, take fast, quick decisions. We saw that sometimes with pesticides, herbicides, that they can affect the flora and fauna or maybe create more resistance. Or we saw that with eutrophication through fertilizer. So yes, of course, when you trying to be innovative, sometimes you're going to focus on one area and you will forget what's the effect on the other area. But it's that's how innovation works. You find some innovative, you go, you do it, you say, I'm doing it, great. Then you say, oh, I'm doing that problem. And then you have regulatory system will say you should change that or you should limit. But it's a part of the innovation, right? We saw the same with electric cars, we saw the same with so many fields. So yeah, many misuse, but it's part of the process. And it's part of the FDA and people to go and have the feedback and make the process better.
I think we should be more concerned about things like antibiotic resistance. So these are the bigger threats to me. Zoonotic disease. It's the way that our food is produced, and it may be safe for us in the short term, but I think that the long-term effects of too much of some foods can be extremely harmful. So I think we're making strides in that, and hopefully it will be better eventually. But we do need to look at both downstream and upstream processing of how are we getting to the food that's on our plates. And sometimes it's a fairly perilous journey.
And 77% of antibiotics in the US are being used for animal agriculture. And by the way, it's World Vegan Day, so I think I had to mention that. And thank you, Lane, for mentioning such an important topic. And people say that might lead to very serious consequences if we won't end up with antibiotics that are working, and we would be faster than the mutations that will occur.
Margaret Chan, who is head of WHO, said that we were entering a new era of antibiotic resistance in which things like the common cold will no longer be addressable, and just we will be back at square one. So it's very important to address this.
And so that leads the question of like what, and I'm not sure this panel knows the answer either, but what as individuals can we do about that, other than potentially changing our specific diet choices? But as you said, once the society reaches antibiotic resistance, or we start producing some superbugs, et cetera, I unfortunately have like way too much health stuff in my Apple news feed, so it's never a fun day to read the news. and see, what new fungus is cropping up across, hospitals and institutions around the world. And so what can we do to just maybe improve our own personal health? So I'd be curious if anyone has a non-clinical, non-MD answer to that question.
I do. Vote with your dollars, get educated, know what you're eating, and don't buy things that you don't want to be prevalent in our food system. It's really not that difficult. I think we just need to really look at food as something that is integral to our health and well-being, and take the time, like you said, Barb, to be somebody who really does a deep dive and understands what works and what doesn't, and just don't support the companies who are taking shortcuts that are ending up on our plates.
Yeah, and also we might not know exactly what is best for us, but we know for sure that stress is bad for us. So if you want to have a healthy lifestyle, you should not over stress about things, about micronutrients that you might not even understand, and stressing more and doing like de facto bad to yourself. So it's a level of balance for protein, nutrients.
I thought you were going to give me the answer to stress.
There was a study done by Dr. Gardner, I think at Stanford, and he was comparing the actually intake of low fat, low carbohydrates, different type of foods actually, and he followed a number of biomarkers in the blood, and he found out that there was not really a big difference between, let's say, high cholesterol, low cholesterol, whatever. But what was different was when he used a high quality ingredients, he had like 4 groups. This high quality ingredients, be it high cholesterol, high fat or low fat, or high carb, low carbs, they were much better off. So it matters what Lane just said. You need to follow the quality ingredients, quality foods, and not some low end when you have saturated fats, for example. But he was saying it depends where it comes from. So if you have whole grains, it shouldn't be over processed grains. It should be whole grains, really whole grains. So
Great.
there was a.
I know we're coming up on time, so we'll have a couple more questions. I know we have a number of students on the line with us, so I want to specifically ask each of you, if you had advice for students or anybody who was interested in getting into this field and to getting into this area of study, how would you suggest that they start?
Apply to Georgetown biotechnology program.
Okay. Yes. Aside from that.
I would just quickly say that I think there is so much room for scientists in this field. It would not exist without them. So of course that's an avenue, but don't dismiss the need for people who have MBAs, or people who are really good at marketing, or people or attorneys to help with the regulatory issues and get government funding into these programs. I mean, I think that there is a vast need for such a diverse array of people. So whatever your interest is, there's probably a slot for you in this industry.
That's a great point, because we brought that up we had another event last semester about careers. And someone else made that excellent point as well, of just like, all of these businesses need everybody, and not just scientists, but they need all of those people. And we need entrepreneurs and innovators, to really push some of these innovations forward.
If you are interested in food, I think it's not only the big enterprises like Nestle and Kraft and you name it. There are also kind of companies like flavor companies, which have actually, they put more of the profit into the research. So they are somewhere between pharma and food industry. So you can research flavors or taste or olfaction. They are great companies, or nutraceuticals, for example. There is tons of them, and they are B2B typically. So you don't see them on the market, right? Because they don't have a Kraft logo. But you can find a very good opportunity to grow as a business person, marketing, or scientist.
And the Good Food Institute has incredible resources of knowledge and data, and I educate myself so much through that.
Thank you, Panos.
Yeah, and there's, when we were putting this panel together, there were a number of other resources here at Georgetown who are working in this space. One of our other EIRs, Neil Prem-Kumar, has a company with Venus Williams called Happy Viking. So there's a number of resources. If you're in the Georgetown community, certainly reach back out to us and we can certainly help you find a place to go next or a place to start. But let me pause there. I know we had one other question, which we may have answered, but I'll ask it anyway. So this person says, as a younger college student, how should I educate myself about what is good for my body and new biotechnology or advances? I think we touched on that a little, but if anyone has something else they'd like to add to that.
I would say just listen to your body, try to be a spectator, try to see try different techniques, different sources, and be aware of that while you're studying, like an educated guess and then more of a structured approach.
I would say just make sure that when you're educating yourself, there's a wealth of information out there, dig into it. It's really interesting. I find it to be sort of a hobby for me, not just a job. But make sure what you're reading is really current because we're coming up with new findings all the time. And so, especially in food, it's really important to make sure that you're up to date, and something from 2020 might have changed completely. So try to read the most recent science.
Very true, very true. Just educate yourself. There are plenty of information. And what I would like to add on is that actually food industry changes much more rapidly than pharma industry. We are much faster in introducing the new technology. So what Elaine was saying, read the most current one. Or if you are watching the YouTube videos, be sure that it is really the most current one.
Or maybe they ask specific questions. Where can they read? I think that's maybe they meant. Where would you suggest these people to go? Which website? Which YouTube channel? What would be your recommendation? I think that's what they're asking.
Yeah, where should they go? So we have Good Food Institute website. Any other specific sources that you guys use when you want to look into what's coming up?
Where do I go? I typically follow biotech, so it's like genetic engineering news. Sometimes they have the food items. Flavor societies, they have a great education seminars. Nutraceuticals as well. Nutraceutical World has their website. The same for skin. You have different societies which publish also scientific papers.
I would say as the amateur in the group, Anna's mentioned Living Forever, but there's if you follow the Blue Zones research group, I don't know how robust they are, so the scientists in the room can chastise me, but I find it really fascinating. If you haven't read, they have a number of books and research articles published, but there's a quick series on Netflix on the topic, and it's just really interesting as they explore the various communities across the world where they have a significantly better longevity, significantly lower incidence of disease and health issues like cancer, et cetera. And it's more than just food. It's a whole variety of different lifestyle and community impacts, but food is certainly part of that. So that's just something interesting if you're looking for a primer to get you started.
I totally agree with that, Barb. I really have enjoyed that so much. One thing I just wanted to add here is whenever you're reading, be careful who is funding the research. I would steer clear of any information that has been published with a specific angle in mind. You want to have people who are agnostic and who are basing it on not self-interest. And it might be the very fine print, but you can find it. And that's really important to adhere to.
I totally agree. That's what I wanted to say. Be always aware who wrote it, why, and because so many of these publications derive from specific companies with a very specific goal in mind. So,
and I would just say, I know we specifically didn't have clinicians on this panel, and that's a whole other topic, as one of our participants mentioned. But as much as you can, and through this as education, is to advocate for yourself. As we've learned, even our best doctors are not necessarily given the tools to help us, the way that we might be looking for in this regard. So if you are experiencing things, like, don't necessarily, take the first answer if that's not satisfying your need. Advocate for yourself, learn as much as you can, and there are clinicians, there are doctors, there are others in the practitioner field, who focus on this and who take this really seriously. And I am a firm believer in pharma. Pharma is keeping me in this seat, but it is a combination, a complementary treatment plan that involves, excuse me, the fuel and the food that we put into our bodies. So yeah, so it sounds like education, advocacy, and just, treating yourself with kindness. So we're over time a little bit. So I'm going to just close off the questions for now. I want to thank our panel so much for their time and their experience, and thank those who were able to join us on the Zoom today. I hope that you learned something and that maybe you're inspired to go read and research, to look into, what's going on in biotechnology, what's going on with some of your favorite foods. Maybe it's a chance to kind of look in your fridge and look in your pantry and see what's there and see where you might be able to do a little bit better for yourself and for your family. And yes, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Georgetown Entrepreneurship. I think Lily put a link into the chat for those of us in the community. We are having an event on November 29th, where we're going to get all of our Georgetown healthcare entrepreneurship community together in person as a kind of a social event. So if you can join us, please do, and you can register through that link. Any parting wisdom from anyone on the panel? Lily, Aveline, anything that I didn't hit on that we really feel is important?
I would just say, I think we're very excited to have more panels just like this. Great information, great interest from students as well. So, maybe whether we have a food as medicine 2 and 3, 4, we'll see. But just great having panels like this, and hope our students can touch in for future.
Yes, thank you so much to the panelists for joining us today, and for all the attendees for joining. I think we're getting a lot more momentum with the healthcare initiative this semester, so hopefully that will continue with all of your support.
Great. Okay, well, again, thank you, everyone. I know we were a little bit over. I appreciate your time tonight. And yeah, I'm gonna go check out what's in my fridge right now. And
don't apologize if it tastes good,
you're right. Sometimes you have to have the ice cream,
Exactly.
Okay.
So thank you very much for putting this panel together. This is great.
It was my pleasure. I learned a lot. Thank you all very much, and have a great night.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye.